Hi, World History. This is Miss Corey. Welcome to U11-L1 Intro to North and South America. I know we talked about North and South America a little bit at the very beginning of semester one. We talked about the first people coming into the continents. Today, we'll talk a little bit more about what were the early civilizations were like. So before we get started, you completed the first full unit of semester two, which was Unit 10, the Renaissance and the Reformation. So just kind of a quick touch it base kind of check-in thing. How did Unit 10 go for you? Do you have any questions about how the class is structured? If you don't have any questions at all, that's totally fine. You can just type none. Your job, you're going to watch this ed puzzle and answer the questions. Questions I will ask you during the video today are going to be in blue text, and you're going to answer those questions directly on the ed puzzle. And if you have any questions for us, email your teacher. We are here to help you. Learning targets. Construct a narrative account about the emergence and expansion of indigenous societies in the Americas and/or trade networks between multiple indigenous societies in the Americas using historical sources. All right, so we could spend a whole year on pre-1500s America and still not get to everything. So we will focus in primarily on the big three civilizations, which are the Maya, the Aztec, and the Inca. So what do you think of when you hear Maya, Aztec, Inca, or Mesoamerica? There's a variety of things to think about. When I hear those words, some of the things I think about would be like Machu Picchu, which is an Inca city that's built on top of a mountain. Or I might think of the step pyramids. I might think of their glyphs, which is the type of writing that they have. I might think of conquistadors who came in the 1500s. I could think of the Mayan calendar or some of the tools that they would make. So here is our timeline. So we saw a timeline last unit. Now this one's a little bit different. So this one's more specific on North and South America. So we will start today with the Olmec Society, and they're one of the most ancient societies of North and South America. So they're from 1200 to 400 BCE, BCE meaning before Common Era. So that's quite a long time. And to put that in perspective, the Roman Republic begins in 507 BCE, so it's even older than that. We also have the Zapotec, the Sabine, the Nazca, the Moche, and then we'll talk about the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Incas as well in this unit. So as you can see here on the chart, the Aztec and the Incas are kind of the last two big civilizations. Of course, they come to a very abrupt end, one in 521 or 1521 and the other in 1533. That is going to be due to conquistadors, which we will also talk about. All right, Mesoamerica. What does that word mean? It is a historic region on North America where groups of indigenous peoples lived and still live today. And it includes famous groups like the Olmecs, the Mayans, and the Aztecs. So here's more of a zoomed in on all the different indigenous tribes that lived in Mesoamerica. As you can see, there's many, many of them. Of course, we unfortunately will not be learning about them all. And then here's another more zoomed in map of what modern day countries are in Mesoamerica. So of course you got Mexico. You would also have Guatemala, Belize, a little bit of Honduras, a little bit of El Salvador, a little bit of Nicaragua, and a teeny bit of Costa Rica. All right, we also have 3 mountain ranges that run through Mexico. These kind of are important to how societies were formed. And then also we take a look at South America. So we'll talk about the Incas more on a later day. But when we do talk about the Incas, they are going to be in Peru, which is this country right here in South America. Of course, they didn't have countries back then, but it is what is in modern day Peru. All right, so the question, when did humans arrive to the Americas? So if you remember back from semester one, if you were with us, we watched a documentary about the first people coming into the Americas. So we talked a little bit about the Ice Age. So that was from about 1.9 million to 10,000 BCE. That is where there were cold climates that created sheets of ice forming the Americans' landscapes. The glaciers froze up the water, so it lowered the sea levels. And lower sea levels meant that there was a land bridge that forms between modern-day Russia and Alaska. And this land bridge is called Beringia. So here's a map of that. So Beringia would be where there's modern-day Russia. over here to Alaska. So, of course, today there is like part of the ocean that goes through it, but a million years ago, it was just land. So, in our video that we watched in semester one, we talked about how humans could have traveled by land, but that would have been pretty tough. It's likely that they actually traveled by boat and went down the coastline. So, when did humans arrive to the Americas? That was kind of the really big question. So, it's really a debate when humans first arrived to the Americas. It was somewhere between 40,000 BCE to 10,000 BCE. No one is super certain. All right, so the first civilization we're going to talk about is the Olmecs. So the Olmec society was from 1200 to 400 BCE and is located at tropical coast of the Atlantic in Mexico, so right here in this purple area. The city of San Lorenzo had a population of about 10,000 to 18,000 people. That is a significant size for a city, especially back like BCE or before Common Era. And of course, San Lorenzo is not the name of the city that the Olmec people called it. San Lorenzo is the modern day of what it is called. And we'll talk about why in just a little bit. So the Olmecs, they had a very religious-focused society. Religion was the center of their cities. They had pyramids, monuments, mounds, raised platforms for the gods. Elite people would build their houses closer to religious temples as a way of like social status. They also have a writing system, but the tricky part of it is no historian today can decipher it, meaning no one can read it. So you could become a historian and decipher it. That'd be pretty cool, actually. So here's more of a zoomed in map of where these people lived right here. All right, so they were polytheistic, meaning that they worshipped multiple gods. Gods had both male and female characteristics about them. Gods were also typically a mix of animal and human characteristics. For example, rulers were associated with the jaguar. And then different animals for this one is an eagle and a human. So you can kind of see like this is the beak and then like the eagle feathers. Priests and shamans were believed to be able to tell the future, cure sickness, and be able to transform into animals such as crocodiles, as we see here on this pottery. That's supposed to be a crocodile, by the way. Snakes and sharks. They were also skilled astronomers. So they created calendars for rainy and dry seasons. They also performed human sacrifices and bloodletting to please the gods. So you're probably like, human sacrifices? Did they actually do that? Or is that just a Hollywood trope? Great question. So Hollywood does like to overemphasize on things, but there were human sacrifices. So that's when priests kill humans in a sacrifice ritual to please the gods. It's usually done on an altar and or as a public viewing. An altar may have looked something like this here. And it typically revolves around weather and harvest wants from the gods. They're also very famous for carving these colossal heads made out of stone. So if a human was standing next to this, an adult human, this would be about the same size as the adult, if not bigger. They were thought to be carved in the likeness of famous rulers or famous ball game players. You're probably like, ball game players? Yeah, that's right. They played sports. It's called the Olmec ball game. It's kind of sort of similar to racquetball. It is where there's a constant back and forth of hitting the ball off the wall. You can kind of see this is a modern representation of what it is. There's two teams, and they have to try to throw this ball through a hoop, like you see here in this picture. Historians are really unsure of what the exact rules were. Today, there is a modern day version of this game called Ulama. So if you're interested, I know there's some YouTube videos about it. I've seen them before. And then here's just another scale of how big these heads are. So of course, these are children. But if you could imagine like a fully grown adult standing next to it, it'd be about the same size. All right, so how did the civilization end? That's kind of one of the big question marks to historians. It's really unknown how the civilization just kind of disappeared almost. Monuments were defaced, which typically means that there was some sort of military conquest or social overthrowing of the leaders, but historians aren't 100%. All right, now let's talk about the Maya civilization. So Maya civilization really evolved around the Yucatan Peninsula. That is the peninsula in modern day Mexico and northern Belize and Guatemala. So it's right here in kind of this pink color. And it makes the southern edge of the Gulf of Mexico. And it's location of the Mayans and the Aztecs. We'll talk about Aztecs next lesson. So again, here's that timeline that we're talking about. So the Olmecs were way back here. Now we're talking about the Mayans, who are going to be way up here. So the Mayans are from 250 to about 900 CE. I say about because 900 is when the Mayan population really scattered. They didn't really have a central city anymore. So it really depends on what historian you're asking, but for simplicity's sake, let's just say 250 to 900. So again, 250 to 900, depending on what historian. Some historians say the 1600s. The capital in the golden age of the Mayans was from 250 to 900 CE. So at about 900 CE is when the capital Chichen Itza was abandoned. And after 900 CE, Mayan population really just scattered and went into more smaller communities, not like really big cities. And today there are, of course, still Mayan people around southern Mexico. So here's a more zoomed in map of the Mayan, where they lived. So as you can see, just kind of the very tail end of Mexico, the vast majority of Guatemala and Belize. All right, so here's just kind of the time frame of the Mayans. Again, we'll focus mostly here on the classic period. So one of the unique things about the Mayans were the glyphs that they did. Those are symbols that Mayans used for the writing system. It is the most advanced writing system in all of Mesoamerica. And symbols, these are the symbols, by the way, each one of these little boxes, could stand for whole words or just syllables. So kind of think of it like the Chinese writing a little bit, except for a lot more like picturesque. They also had something called codex. So codex is bark paper books where Mayans wrote their documents. They wrote their history, things that happened, maybe like big battles. This one's showing like trapping and hunting and fishing. Now, codex are very unique because when the Spanish conquistadors came to North America in the 1500s, they ended up burning all of these codex, all of these historical documents that told the history, the culture, the life of the Mayans were burned. They were destroyed. The reason for this is because Spanish Catholic priests thought of it as the quote unquote work of the devil. There are only 3 intact Mayan codex that still survive today. And you can see these in museums in Madrid, Chicago, and Mexico City. All right, next, let's talk about the Aztec a little bit. So you are going to actually watch a video about the Aztecs in U11-L2 and U11-L3. It's a video from the History Channel. Answer the questions directly on the Ed puzzle. I will be scoring you on what questions you get right or wrong. The video tells you a little bit about the Mayan civilization as well, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of information about the Aztecs because they're fairly similar civilizations, or else you might be a little bit confused between the two civilizations. So I'm just going to go through some basics of the Aztecs. So the Aztecs, they were from 1300 to 1521. They had their capital in Tenochtitlan, and it's located in the Valley of Mexico. So the Valley of Mexico is a high plateau surrounded by mountains and volcanoes. And today, that is where modern-day Mexico City is located. So you can see here, Tenochtitlan, or Mexico City, is right here kind of in the southern middle section of Mexico. So here is a drawing that Spanish artists did of what Tenochtitlan looked like before the Spanish conquistadors came in and destroyed the whole place. But as you can see here, there are road systems. There are bridges going across the water. It is laid out in a grid pattern. Of course, it's surrounded by a giant lake, and in the background you can see all the mountains. And then here's a picture of modern-day Mexico City from above. So as you can see here, there is a lot more buildings, of course, and there is no more water. You can see kind of the mountains in the background through the smog. So the Aztecs built their civilization upon 5 lakes, as you can see here on this map. The civilization of the Aztecs formed after triple lines between the 3 cities on the lake. So those three alliances were Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan. Lake Texcoco being the main lake where the capital Tenochtitlan would then be built. So here's Lake Texcoco right here, kind of right in the middle. And then here's the island where Tenochtitlan would be built, their capital city. All right, so here again is kind of an overall map of what Lake Texcoco historically would have looked like. Today, since the city of Mexico City is there is very little of the lake left. It's mostly like reservoirs and ponds, like you can see right here. So you'll learn more about the Aztec civilizations in lessons 2 and 3. So let's wrap this up. Today we talked about Mesoamerica, the Ice Age, Beringia, the Olmec, which had polytheistic religions and human sacrifices, the Yucatan Peninsula, a little bit about the Mayans and Aztecs, including glyphs, Codex, Valley of Mexico, Triple Alliance, and Lake Texcoco. Next up, we're going to do U11-L2, the Aztecs Part 1, and then U11-L3, the Aztecs Part 2. Each of the videos, I believe, has 5 questions to them. So make sure that you're answering them correctly because I will grade you on what you get right or wrong. And then after that, you're going to do U11-L4, Intro to the Incas. That's one of the videos that I make. If you have questions, comments, or really want to learn more, email your teacher. We're happy to help you out. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.